There's a quality to taking the architectural distinctiveness of a building and then somehow, through some kind of alchemy, blending it with a new use that is exciting and different and memorable.
Many buildings have important stories, and we have to figure out their history before we decide which are the ones that need to be preserved and which are the ones that maybe we can let go.
The things that keep a community unique are these kinds of spaces. So to preserve the uniqueness and the special qualities of a community, this is important.
We are sitting in Titan Hollow, which is the home to Mad Macintosh Cider and Alloy Kitchen. We are a full-service restaurant and cidery.
The facility itself in the early 1900s actually started as automobile manufacturer, and they transitioned into brass. And as a brass manufacturer, they were one of the leading manufacturers in the nation.
The property, which many businesses called home over the years, shut down the bulk of its manufacturing in 2008.
And when we moved in, it was 2020. So it's 12 years of nothing. The lockers were still filled with personal effects because they just closed the door.
The owners brainstormed. What kind of second life could the property have?
The alternative was ripping it down and scrapping it, something I just couldn't believe I ever wanted to see happen. So I just opposed it.
I had brought my cider to a tailgate at a Penn State football game, and the tailgate was run by the owner of this building, Joe Leahy. I was looking at putting a bid in on a vineyard in the Finger Lakes, and he said, well, before you do that, I want you to check out my factory. So that Sunday after the game, I came down here and walked through this space. Monday, when I headed back to New York, I effectively pulled my bid out at the Finger Lakes, sold my house, and moved down here during a pandemic.
For many communities hoping to repurpose a building, organizations like Preservation Pennsylvania are an important resource.
Preservation Pennsylvania is a statewide nonprofit. We primarily do grassroots advocacy and legislative advocacy work across the state. We get involved in all kinds of properties, from bridges to cultural landscapes to large farms. There's a number of things that cause the loss of a building. Demolition by neglect, no one owns it, or the people that own it can't take care of it, and eventually it just falls down. It can be encroaching in development, where commercial businesses are coming in and taking farmland. Sometimes it's just the wrong building at the wrong place that doesn't have a viable use.
Each year, Preservation Pennsylvania identifies different kinds of properties they deem at risk. A recent focus of theirs was churches.
Abandoned churches is not a new issue. It's probably been a good 10 to 15 years where we've been seeing large-scale closures of churches, starting with the Catholic Church, where they announced the closing of a number of parishes in Johnstown all the same year.
Cambria City was the original immigrant neighborhood in Johnstown. When immigrants in the late 19th and early 20th centuries came off the boat at Ellis Island, one of the first things that they did was to develop an ethnic parish. And as a result, as recently as the 2000s, there were 11 ethnic churches in Cambria City alone. The diocese was really struggling with trying to maintain these old buildings. And so we started the Steeples Project as a campaign to repurpose these buildings and to turn them into cultural assets for the community.
In 2011, the Steeples Project acquired 3 Roman Catholic churches: the Casimir Center, St. Columba, and the Grand Hall.
The Grand Hall is a combination performing arts venue and also special events venue. It was built in 1907 and 1908. It's highly resonant. There are hard surfaces all over the place. There are soaring arches that just splatter sound everywhere. So there's a lot of things that don't work well in the hall. But things that do work well in the hall include organ music, choral music, and unamplified instrumental music.
Historic preservation organizations are not against development. We are not, despite what many people think, trying to keep everything the way it always was. We don't need a school to always be a school. We don't need a church to always be a church. As long as the architectural importance is still there and the building is being reused and paying taxes or generating income, that's a win for us.
The former St. Columba was a Roman Catholic Irish parish until 2009, and it has been vacant since then. We are currently in the process of turning it into a performing arts venue with an emphasis on live theater. This is a historical space as far as the federal government is concerned, which means that we have to be very sensitive to maintaining what they call the character-defining features of this space.
Reusing a church is challenging because by the time it's for sale, it already has a lot of maintenance issues. Large roofs and steeples. You have to get specialized contractors to deal with stained glass. Plus, it's large open space. So it takes a little creativity, but I'm continually amazed by how creative developers and owners of buildings are.
Often, one of the first steps in repurposing a property is dealing with the wear and tear of many years of neglect.
When I first got here, I'd love to say that it was love at first sight. It wasn't. It was dirty, it was filthy. There was grime and metal shavings and everything was black. But the bones were here. The windows, the rivets in the I-beams, the rusty wall. Rust, I often say, is my favorite color because it has so many different depths to it. So the space started speaking.
A lot of the equipment that was put in place, even the wall that's behind me, is a reuse of equipment that was going to go to the scrapyard.
I went into the boiler house and effectively put my sticker on everything that I had an interest in. We took the pilot controllers, which we now call the robot wall. The guys came down, they go, "Ange, you put them on upside down." And I'm like, "Do not change them. They're funnier that way. They look like robots."
The folks at Titan Hollow were not the only ones who started out with a mess on their hands.
We're here in what they called the bird cage of the old stone jail in Evansburg. The jail was built in 1872, and it kind of cemented Evansburg to be the county seat. It's a very imposing building. The impression is to put forth the idea of a fortress and a castle. It's just really meant to tell people we're in charge here, you know.
I worked in this old jail 16 years. At that time, I was a sergeant, training sergeant. There were probably 380 some inmates when I first started, and it was an absolute nightmare trying to figure out where you're going to house everybody. It was terrible.
After 125 years of operations, the jail closed in 1997 due to overcrowding.
Without heat in the building for many years now, it's just, everything is just deteriorating. The paint's coming off the walls. I mean, the condition of this place right now is deplorable.
The most important thing when you're going to take on a preservation fight is to figure out what the win is before you even start. Is your win stopping the project? Is your win finding another use for the same building? Is your win buying the building and doing something else with it?
In early 2022, a developer bought the jail. The price? $1.
The owner is trying to get the building up to code and then see what happens. I personally am an artist, and I wouldn't mind having a studio space in one of the jail cells. I mean, there's tons of possibilities, but it needs a lot of work.
I'd like to see something happen with this prison because there's so much history. But it's an uphill battle for anybody.
The success of preservation happens at the local level. You have to be an advocate.
For the Steeples Project, community support is vital. During the early years, we had some very generous grants from local corporations and also from local individuals. Now the challenge is to find that support elsewhere.
Most people don't have the resources, so we talk about where could the money come from? Is there a reuse that could involve historic tax credits? If it does become a nonprofit, what does that kind of grant funding look like?
We actually got a renewal grant for about $2.5 million. So the price that we bought it for was low, but we ended up having to spend $1 million to clean it up.
It's going to be an increasing challenge for us because our plans are pretty ambitious. It's a multi-million-dollar project. And so I'm going to have to get better at this game.
The game's a marathon. So I've got a little bit more patient now over the years and understand the processes, but you don't do anything overnight.
It takes an average of 7 years to save a property. It's a slow build, and eventually you'll start to see changes happen. You'll start to see the local officials maybe listening a little more closely when people stand up at the public comment period of a meeting, and you'll start to see more people wanting to get involved.
A lot of people poured their heart and soul into this facility, and I think it's just amazing when you get people in that have a vision and can execute and won't quit.
The day that brought me to tears was the first day we had live music. It was real, and people were dancing and drinking and eating and laughing. That was the moment.
To see a space suddenly come to life and see people enjoying themselves, finding value out of being in that space, it's worth the effort, it's worth the frustration. It's worth it.
Watch full episodes of Keystone Stories now on the PBS Video app.